Just because you don't take insurance doesn't mean your clients can't use it. Mentaya is an out of network billing platform that gets clients to get back 70% back on therapy without the therapist lifting a finger. I've checked out their product and it's truly a game changer. It's what I wish I had in my private pay practice. They handle literally everything so you can focus on what matters therapy. Go to practiceofthepractice.com/Mentaya to try it out for free. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/MENTAYA to get started for free. Mentaya is amazing if you have private pay clients that want to bill their insurance. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 950. Well, I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. We've done a really fun series called the 7-Figure Practice series. We did that throughout most of December. Then at the beginning of December, we did the New Year, New Habits, where we covered all sorts of things like strategies to scale up, multiple streams of income. We talked about launching courses, OCD and launching a podcast. We talked about biggest HR mistakes, all sorts of things that we covered as part of that New Year, New Habits series that we did. So we're coming back to the 7-Figure Practice series here. This is our very last one with our 7-Figure Practice owners, and it's been a fun ride. We've had tons of applications come in for our 7-Figure Practice Club right at the beginning of December when we opened it up. We got a number of them right at the beginning. So just a reminder, if you are a 7-Figure Practice owner, this is a membership that's open to you. We're opening it only for 12 people. So we're going to have a group of 12 people that we meet twice a month. The first time we meet for 90 minutes, and that's going to be 3 25-minute hot seats where one of the members comes with a question and they get a 25-minute hot seat, and we give lots of ideas and here's how I would think through it. We do that 3 times, and so you're going to get a bunch of hot seats throughout the year that we're together. And then the second meeting is where we're going to dig in and have one of our members do a presentation about something they feel they're just knocking out of the park. And so that's going to be a great way to learn from each other, to also practice our consulting skills, and to also get affirmation from other people to say, you need to do something bigger with this information. This is amazing. And then we're also meeting in person twice. So we're going to meet once here in Traverse City, Michigan, and then we're going to determine later on in the year where our second meetup is going to be. So that is open. Reminder, that closes January 31st. So that closes tomorrow. So head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/club if you are a 7-Figure Practice owner to apply to join that and be around a lot of other 7-Figure Practice owners. Now, we've had a bunch of amazing 7-Figure Practice owners talking, and I am so excited that today we have David Sternberg. Now, David owns a psychotherapy group practice in Washington, D.C. called DC Talk Therapy. In 2012, after 10 years of solo practice, he started DC Talk Therapy and now has 12 therapists and 2 full-time administrators. David, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you did solo practice for a long time before you did a group practice. Why'd you stay solo for so long?
So I stayed solo partially because I had a full-time job at a hospital here in DC. And so that was a regular paycheck, and it was nice to get that. And so outside of the 9 to 5 hours, I would see clients. So a couple evenings a week and then all day Saturdays. And so that worked out really well for years until I felt like there was sort of a tipping point where I had, about 10 clients a week, and I was really stretched pretty thin between the 2 jobs. And I was really liking private practice, and I felt like I was ready to finally move into full-time private practice. And
Now,
so,
that tipping point for you, what was going on at that point where you felt, was it just that you saw the opportunity of lots of clients coming in? Was it just the joy you were feeling in it? Were you sick of the job?
a little bit of everything. I was a little sick of the job. It was pretty high stress, really tough place to work. I worked in an ER, a psych ER, and I was really liking the private practice, and I thought I could really make a go of it. And so I finally decided um, in 2007 to go from part-time to full-time. So that was a really big move. And then in 2012, 5 years later, once I had a full-time solo practice, that's when I decided to start a group practice.
Mm. Now, when you first started the group practice, did you go 1099 or W-2?
1099.
Yeah. How'd you make that decision?
I just felt like it was the easiest, and I started off very small. So I continued to see about 25 clients a week, and I brought on one therapist, very part time. She worked, probably saw 3 to 5 clients a week in the very beginning, and so that was my start.
Mm. Now, when did it go from just, kind of part-time, 1099s to growing into something more full-time with 12 clinicians?
So I would say it's really been a story of just slow and steady progress, about 10 to 20% growth year over year. So since we're out of network and we're in a very competitive market in DC, it's really hard to do that sort of hockey stick growth that I know some other group practice owners have had, where they're increasing 30, 40, 50% year over year. So it's really been about 10 to 20% per year, and it's been a slow and steady. So I've brought on average about one clinician per year. There's been some who have left, and then I've brought on others, but on average, about one clinician per year over the
Mm.
years.
Yeah, I like that idea of just slow, steady growth, lower risk, all that. Now,
Hmm.
I know one thing you've done to grow is really doing community marketing, and that's going to be kind of the main
Hmm.
thing that we're going to chat about today.
Yeah.
First, how do you define community marketing? Because I hear marketing, I hear social media marketing. Community
Hmm.
marketing isn't a phrase that I hear a lot, and I would love to hear.
Hmm.
That's a phrase you used before we started getting rolling here.
Hmm.
How do you define community marketing?
I define it as meeting with other people in the community who are possible referral sources. And so for me, by far, the best referral source in the community has been primary care physicians.
Mm.
Secondarily, psychiatrists. I've also networked with other colleagues, with acupuncturists, massage therapists, even clergy. I've tried that. So I've networked with lots and lots of um, with other people in the community who could be referral sources, and but I've really found that by far the best source has been primary care doctors, and I've been doing community marketing since 2007, so it's been about 16 years now.
Mm. Now, take us through what that process looks like. Maybe before you were at the level you're at now, when you had just a handful of therapists, and you're moving from a solo to a group. I know one thing people often struggle with is moving from sort of like, "Come see me, I'm the therapist," to now
Hmm.
we have lots of therapy options here. How did you, I guess, preserve kind of who you were known for, and how did you think through now having several other people that were part of that dynamic when you were marketing? So, like, I guess I was kind of formulating the question there of how did you market the practice as a practice rather than as just you as a solo practitioner?
Hmm. Sure. So I've always been very interested in working with young adults, people in their 20s and 30s. That's always been just a real interest of mine. I struggled with figuring things out myself in my 20s and 30s, and I always gravitated towards that age group, and I really wanted to help that age group as much as possible. And so when it came to time to market, that was really the hook that I used. So instead of just coming to see me, it was um, if you are a young adult, someone in your 20s and 30s, we can help you. And so even when I started hiring, I would ask clinicians, do they have experience working with this age range? And are you passionate about working with this age range? And if they weren't, then it was a no-go. And so I've brought on clinicians over the years who really love working with this population and are skilled at it and experienced at it.
So yeah, I think new group practice owners often are trying to figure out, are we going to have a niche as an entire practice? So for you, it was helping younger people, and or do we want each clinician to kind of have their own niche? Which is what I love, is that we can see people take different approaches based on what they like. Like I remember back in episode 932 with Elizabeth Carr. Her whole focus of her interview with me was on not specializing. And so I think it's great to just figure out, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you wanted. And so to make sure that's embedded in the interview process, in how you market and all of that. So it sounds like you were finding the right people first, and then that made it
Mm-hmm.
easier to then go out into the community.
Right, absolutely. And I was also looking for people who wanted to offer really attractive hours for clients. And so if clinicians were not willing to work evenings or Saturdays, I was a little, you know, um, less rigid about Saturdays, but I really needed clinicians to work evening hours because that's where the real demand was and continues to be. And so I made that part of the hiring process as well.
Mm. Now, take us through what it would look like during that phase to reach out to doctors. Because what I
Sure,
often hear from consulting clients or people in group practice boss is, they leave an email, they leave a voicemail, and then they just never hear back. But it sounds like you've cracked the
sure.
code. So take us into the blueprint of
Well,
engaging
sure.
doctors.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just take you back to 2007 because that's really where it it all started for me. And so at the time, all I had was a pretty basic website. I had a Psychology Today profile, and I had just started dabbling in Google AdWords, but really didn't know what I was doing with that at all. And so the turning point came for me. I'll never forget it. I was sitting at home, and it was a weekday afternoon, uh, and which tells you how busy I was at the time. And I remember thinking back to when I worked at that hospital and how the drug reps would come in once a month or so and talk to the staff about the latest drug that they were promoting. And they always brought lunch for everyone, and staff attendance was always really good. And I really enjoyed those meetings. And I thought, well, what if I did something similar? Doesn't have to be, like this whole elaborate lunch, but what if I just offered, uh, you know, my time, and I would come in and bring some lunch or snacks or coffee or whatever it was, and just met them um, and saw if I was able, or asked them if I was able to help them, because that's really how um, I started out, and my goal from the beginning was, how can I help the doctors and the nurses and their patients. It was not about promoting myself or pushing a certain agenda, but it was really finding out, what are they hearing from their patients. And I always use the words patients. I learned that pretty quickly,
Mm-hmm.
not clients, because that's a medical term and that's what they're used to. So how can I help them and their patients? What are they hearing, and how can we be a resource for them and their patients?
And what kind of things would they say?
So a lot of times they would say, I'm hearing a lot of anxiety, or um, I've got some patients who are talking about marital problems. Sometimes it was substance abuse or depression, and if it was something that we specialized in, that we know and work with and have a lot of experience with, I would say, I think we can help. If it wasn't, particularly early on, now we have a substance abuse specialist, but at the time we didn't. I would say, you know, um, I know a lot of colleagues in the community, and let me take down your email address. And when I get back to my office, I'll email you a list of some colleagues who specialize in that. And so that's really how it started. So I had, in 2007, when I first started this, I had maybe about 10 clients a week I was seeing, which was okay. But I knew that I needed more than that to make a decent living. And after about a year or so of meeting with doctors, I had gotten to the point where I was seeing about double that, about 20 clients a week. I will say, because I think this is really important, that I got rejected a lot,
Mm.
uh, way more than I was accepted. So that's something that is just part of the deal, and you've got to be okay with. And thankfully, I'm okay with rejection because I had a lot of it. I had receptionists say, the doctor, doesn't have time for this. I got hung up a couple of times. I had one uh, chiropractor. I thought maybe it would be good to speak to a chiropractor. He told me flat out over the phone he doesn't believe in psychotherapy, and hung up the phone on me. So,
It's
so
kind of ironic coming from a
it,
chiropractor because so
yeah,
many people are like
it,
feel that way towards chiropractors, and I
yeah,
have a chiropractor, but it's just like that's really funny
yeah,
in this day and age that someone would be that blatant.
yeah. I know, right? So, I, I I was very comfortable, and still am very comfortable with being rejected. And my expectation, even from the get go, is that I would probably be rejected more often than not, which was absolutely the case. But I figured I didn't need that many doctors to say yes, and then for them to refer to me. And that's still the case. To this day, we've got a handful of doctors' offices who refer to us.
Hmm.
So I think one of the points here is that you don't need a lot of uh, of doctors to refer to you. You just need a handful who will consistently refer to you.
Hmm. Now that's one thing that oftentimes, whether it's in Group Practice Boss or in my consulting, where we'll talk about just the numbers game. That when you
Hmm.
first start networking, to just say, okay, for every 20 emails that you send out or 20 phone calls you do, just how many return the phone call, and to just say, okay,
Right.
so we know 5 out of 20 are going to refer or are going to respond back. And then of those five, how many, will have you swing by or will actually connect with you? Maybe one. Well, and then for every five you meet, we may know that you get one good referral. So you got to probably make at least 100 phone calls or emails before you're going to get one or two. When you think
Yes.
about your numbers and how you think through that, and maybe you don't have it like outlined that way, but do you kind of in your head know, hey, if I need to kind of amp things up here at the practice, I need to do X number of emails to make a new contact, or like, have you kind of quantified it that way, or do you think through it differently?
Well, I sort of use this baseball analogy uh, from the get go that I was probably going to bat about 250. I was going to, for every four times that I reached out to a doctor's office, one would say, yes, come on in. That didn't necessarily mean that that one that who said yes would turn into a referral source, but I used uh, that 1 out of 4 fraction, and it turned out to be pretty true over the years. Um, what I would say is, to this day, I don't have a certain number, but um, what I would say is that the ones who uh, early on start referring to you, what you want to do is work really hard to cultivate those relationships. It's sort of like that 80-20 rule where, 20% of the sources out there, referral sources, will provide 80%
Mm-hmm.
of your business, and that's really been true over time. Is I've worked really hard, and I can talk a little bit in detail about things that I do to really cultivate those those doctors and those doctors' offices that start to refer. Because the worst thing that you can do is, once they refer to you, then you stop communicating with them,
Mm-hmm.
because the chances are they'll stop referring to you.
Mm-hmm. Going in network with insurance can be tough. I know when I took insurance, there were long wait times and it was so confusing. Filing all the right paperwork is time consuming and tedious. And even after you're done, it can take months to get credentialed and start seeing clients. That's why Alma makes it easy and financially rewarding to accept insurance. When you join their insurance program, you can get credentialed within 45 days and access enhanced reimbursement rates with major payers. They also handle all of the paperwork from eligibility checks to claims submissions and guarantee payment within 2 weeks of each appointment. Once you've joined Alma's insurance program, you can see clients in your state of licensure, regardless of where you're working from. It's amazing to know that you can be fully online. Learn more about building a thriving practice with Alma at helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to get started. Now, what's like a typical timeline? So, say you go to someone's office, it's a positive connection.
Mhm.
You feel like they're probably going to refer to you. How long does it take typically for that first referral? Does it kind of trickle in for a bit, and then do you know that within 6 to 12 months they're going to be referring 10 people a month? Like, is there a typical?
It's interesting. There really hasn't been. It's been all over the map. For some, it's been almost immediate, and then for others, it's been many months. Um, but even with that, I've thought, well, let's just play the long game. Right after meeting with the staff, I always email them and say, how great it was to meet with them, and I'm happy to be a resource for them, and help them out in any way possible. And again, for some, it's been almost immediate, and then others, much longer. So I don't think that there's sort of a typical number. I think part of it comes down to need. Like, so for example, and it's kind of a funny story. So years ago, I reached out to this one doctor's office and talked to the receptionist. And the other part about all of this is that you've got to become friends with the receptionist, because the receptionist is the gatekeeper to the doctor's office, and they play a very important role. So you've got to be incredibly kind and patient and friendly with them. They're often overworked and tired, and they often deal with some really difficult patients. So I've really gone out of my way to be incredibly patient and kind with them. And so this receptionist years ago said, well, the doctor at that practice works through lunch, and so he wouldn't even be available to meet at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. But she did say, he starts at 7 a.m. And so if you're interested in meeting with him, you'd have to come before then. And I thought, well, all right. I mean, if that's what it takes, then I'll do it. And so the next week, I showed up at his office with bagels and coffee at 6:45, and we met in one of the exam rooms, and we talked for 10 minutes or so. And at the end of it, he said, you know what? This is really great, because until I met you, I have no idea who to refer to. I just go down the care for first list and just pick a name. And with him, it was almost immediate, right? Because for him, he knew no therapists, and here was, one right in front of him. And he started referring almost immediately. And that's turned into a fantastic referral source. So, part of the reason I tell that story is because you also have to be really flexible if you're going to do this kind of work. You not only have to be okay with rejection, but you also got to be really flexible. You know, I, I thought, here's an opportunity, and if I have to be at his office at 6:45 in the morning, if that's what it takes, then that's fine. I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, I think that's that kind of early hustle that I think is so important. I remember when I had my full time job and I started my side counseling practice. It was There was a lady that had Mary in the morning, and every Tuesday morning from 7 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. she had me on as a call in radio therapist,
Hmm.
and this was my side gig.
Hmm.
And so sometimes there's those things that just help you stand out so much differently. Um,
Hmm.
what for you are decisions you're making now that you think are going to help you continue to grow and scale?
So, even after all these years, I continue to do community marketing just because I believe in it so much. Uh, it's um, it's about 20% each year of the referrals that we get are from community marketing. So I continue to meet with colleagues. I continue to meet um, with new doctors. I work really hard at cultivating um, relationships with um, current doctors and their staff. And one of the other things that's really worked well in the last maybe 4 or 5 years is hiring therapists with a specialty area. So when we first started, it was really all about young adults, and then over time, it's really developed into a niche within a niche. So it's like now we have an OCD expert who works with young adults. We have a substance abuse expert. We have someone who works almost exclusively with the LGBTQ young adult community. So I've really looked to hire therapists with a niche rather than just someone who loves working with and is experienced with working with young adults.
I think that's a smart move. I think that more and more, when someone's looking for a therapist, especially for their children, they're really looking for someone with a particular expertise. Like I was,
Hmm.
even, as I was uncoupling, and as my ex and I were going through the divorce, my daughter's mom moved to California, and they only see her, a little bit. And so right away, I'm like, these girls are going to need to process through that with me having
Yeah,
80+% parenting,
yeah.
and finding good therapists that understand that also work with kids and have hours that are conducive. I
Hmm.
wanted someone that was really good at that particular kind of thing. I didn't just want a generalist, and so
Right.
I think that's a smart move as you look to scale.
Hmm.
What are things that for you at this level are maybe tougher than you thought, or are things that you're like, boy, this has its own challenges? Like, what's challenging about being a seven-figure practice owner?
I think one of the bigger challenges that we have now, as opposed to pre-pandemic, is culture. Pre-pandemic, we all got together regularly, whether it was informally or formally. Um, and since then, it's been harder to get together. We have a good number of therapists who only work remotely. We have some who do a hybrid. Uh, I I still go into the office. I love it. I feel like there's no substitute for seeing clients in person, and I love seeing other therapists in the office. And so I would say for me the challenge really in the last couple of years has been more about culture and feeling connected to each other, whereas pre-pandemic it was so easy to do that. We would do something. I don't know if other practices do this, but this was also a great culture exercise. Every 2 months or so, we would have a lunch and learn where I would bring in an expert, whether it was a psychiatrist from the community or a colleague who had a particular expertise. in something that we didn't. And we'd bring that person in and they would talk for 20, 30 minutes and then do Q&A, and I would bring lunch in for everyone. And the therapist loved it. We had amazing attendance. And it was a great way to not only get together, all of us, but also to learn new information, new skills. And so since the pandemic, we do far fewer of those sorts of things. So I would say the real challenge in the last couple of years has really been about community and connection with the other therapists.
Yeah. Well, the last question I have is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would say that being in private practice, particularly running a group practice, has a lot of highs and lows, and that's okay. One day we'll feel amazing. The next day we'll feel just awful. But it's really important to push through it, to know that it's not always going to look this bleak, and also to surround yourself with other private practice owners, particularly as I've moved through this journey to know and to meet with other group practice owners. That's been just invaluable, and not even so much for the information or sharing of information, although that's helpful. It's just as important to commiserate, to have someone else who understands the particular challenges that we go through.
Oh, so awesome. Well, David, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about your practice, where should we send them?
Sure. So the name of the practice is called dctalktherapy.com. And then in addition, about 3 years ago, I started a side business called penandpractice.com, where I help therapists from all over the country with their writing needs. And so I write website copy for them. I'll write copy for their Psychology Today profile, things like that. And I love it because I have a writing background, and it's just so much fun for me.
Wow. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Joe.
You know what I love about kind of what David just talked through is that slow and steady progress, that, he figured out for his own life what worked in regards to next steps, the speed of hiring, the speed of networking. And, so often I see practices that spend so much time and money trying to be the brand new flashy practice, and they just burn through their money. They don't solidify those good habits, and then they burn out and often end up leaving the field. And so I love that this series we've just been digging into what does it take to become a 7-figure practice owner? And as I've interviewed all these folks, I think the big takeaway for me has been, have a vision for what you want, but hold that loosely, test things, and none of us have it exactly figured out. We take one step in front of the other. We see what's working and keep doing that. And if something's not working, then we get rid of that. And so take those next steps no matter what phase you're in. If you are a 7-figure practice owner, just remember today, when this launches on the 30th and the 31st, are the last 2 days that you can apply for the 7-figure practice club. We don't have another podcast coming out until after that closes. So make sure that you apply for that right away. That 7-figure practice club, we're going to meet twice a month with other 7-figure practices. We're also meeting up twice throughout the year. We're meeting together for 12 months with 12 people. You can apply for that over at practiceofthepractice.com/club. And also, we couldn't do this show without our amazing sponsors. Alma is our sponsor for today, and Alma knows, I know, that going in network with insurance can be super tough. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I had a private pay practice, was I just didn't want to deal with it. But honestly, if I started a practice now, I would definitely be taking some insurance so that I could scale a lot faster. And that's why Alma makes it easy and financially rewarding to accept insurance. When you join their insurance program, you can get credentialed within 45 days. And once you've joined Alma's insurance program, you can see clients in your state of licensure, regardless of where you're working from. You can learn more over at helloalma.com/Joe. Again, that's hello, alma.com/Joe to get started. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.